You are watching Xirtus.
I would feel embarrassed to tell anyone outside of this area, I'm a Penn State fan because they could just bring up the Sandusky issue. So
Yeah,
that
that's the thing. But then
thankfully,
I started to realize that's like probably everywhere, and that's just sort of like the fact that we heard about one is because some kids weren't ready for that culture. But that culture exists everywhere. Is that not right? I mean, I don't feel like it's right to be like, oh, it's just in Pennsylvania. I feel like Pennsylvania might be like our purview into that world. But isn't that? It's kind of like when people say you go to jail, you know, football. It's like the same thing, right?
there's a lot to philosophize about general power structures. Like people follow the powerful and they excuse them for abhorrent acts. Like the sheer amount of cope that was going around in the wake of the whole Sandusky trial. It was like people one didn't want to go out of their way to correct the wrong. They wanted to go out of their way to try to protect their idols, and their idols were people like Joe Paterno. And so that's one thing. It's don't have faith in people. Have faith in God. Have faith in God. Don't have faith in people. Like if I had any faith in people or idols, it definitely was a lesson on how not to idolize people and the horrendous effects that can come from just idolizing people.
Sometimes I idolize fictional characters. Like I always said, like don't idolize real people. You're better off idolizing fictional characters, if anything.
Well, it depends. I feel like I like how in the Bible, this is like okay, so many thoughts now. But first, I want to circle back after this to what might be good about peer pressure and torture or whatever it is we're saying happens to you, like the abuse of being in a fraternity, because there may be the reason that these people are successful might be tied to the fact that they're systematically traumatizing each other, right? But wait,
Ritually.
yeah. But wait, what were we saying? Just because there was a point.
Idolizing.
Yeah, so in the Bible, it's cool because in like the Gita and the Quran, you're like, wow, look, this is sweet. This person's perfect. Then in the Gita, he's a god who never sins and he lives off butter. But with the Bible, it's like this guy, he's a schmuck, and he he loves God, but he cheats on his wife, or worse, he kills his best friend so he can have sex with his best friend's wife, or whatever. Like it's a series of sinning, horrible people doing terrible things, even though they've got this all righteous God who's actually kind of an angry, jealous person themselves. And so it's not just this abstraction, even though it's a maybe fictional or non-fictional story, it doesn't matter. Archetypically, it's about a failing person, which that's the core issue when you have a false idol, like you're saying, like because a false idol or like a created idol can just be perfect, but that's not a real achievable practical thing. That's like a Neoplatonic concept, like oh, it's a circle. You're better off with like this person murdered their best friend, and then this happened, and then this person they killed their family, and this happened, and this person became an alcoholic and gave up on their dream, and this happened, and that way you can assess the consequences of those actions to choose where you're willing to work harder to try to achieve perfection and where you're willing to let things slide because you don't care so much if you live in a big house or not. You care more if your family loves you or if you did the right thing when you die or if you're remembered for impacting people the right way. Like you get to prioritize based on causality.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could use different metrics. Like the Asians, I think historically, to come up with cool shit like kung fu, they would just mimic animals, right? Like they would be like, "Oh, look at the way this animal kills that other animal.
Oh
Let's try
yeah.
that out." Like that works. Or look at the way this rock just doesn't move. Let me be like that during difficult times. It kind of makes sense. Like,
Yeah, that's like it's crazy we don't do that more. So I was
yeah.
thinking about that earlier today because
I
there's
mean,
like the
Nietzsche did
farm.
that shit. He was like, "Don't be the Shih Tzu, be the wolf." Like
Well, that's what science right now. When we get to nanotechnology, it really starts to become biomimicry. Well, biomimicry should be looking at how things are efficiently done and have evolved and refined themselves to be done perfectly, right? And a lot of the animals in nature. I was thinking earlier about ant hills. You can tell supposedly from the Farmer's Almanac and from some certain natural like this is a thing done by like pagans and everything is to look at the size of an anthill, and it tells you how cold it's going to be, because they're deciding how dense they need to make their anthill and how high above the ground and everything. But it can predict months ahead of time how cold a winter will be. And some of the best information we have to predict that. So, I mean, yeah, we should always listen to what animals are doing in nature. But what about the torture? You don't think that that's useful? No, I mean, really, because
even
like
animals do it.
I feel like if you beat yourself, like, I'm sorry, that's not the same expression, but if you try really hard to like self-flagellate yourself, or you work out all the time, or you're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is a kind of suffering, and even like, let's say you don't just do that to yourself, but to your children, right? Like making your children get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and making them run 20 kilometers a day or something like that, and eat less and work out more. I mean, that's a kind of torture. So like, does that, at what level do you decide, and then they might have war, or they might have conflict, and so I have to be the one to be giving them their first war, their first conflict, their first interaction with fear and doubt, and I should get my child lost in the woods and leave them there and make them find their way home. How many friends of yours do you have who went through that?
Well, I
Where
would
like
say
their parents made them get lost in the woods and made them walk home.
I would say the dynamic at play is that within life, pain is not optional, but suffering is. And in that case, like you get to choose your own form of suffering, really, at the end of the day. And if you don't choose your own suffering, then something else or someone else is going to choose it for you. So when you get to choose your own suffering, you get to grow from it in the way that you direct it. So it's like you said, it's like, yeah, like waking up early or working out. It's like, yeah, I guess that is a form of pain, but at least you chose that pain. Unlike where if you didn't do that, pain would still inevitably show its head, eventually, when like you just can't do stuff with your body because you neglected it or whatever, because you neglected to get enough sleep or something. I don't know, just stuff like that. It's like pain is just a part of life. And the question is, how well can you like consciously decide which pain you get to experience and grow from in a specific way?
It seems like it would be most valuable if you're testing your true boundary within safe parameters, and if you're making it your purpose or whatever to test other people's boundaries, so that they may grow, because growth happens outside of our comfort zone. They call them growing pains, not growing pleasures. Finding out where that safe boundary is, but also creating a safe environment for kids to test boundaries on their own. So I think the issue with the hazing thing is that, everyone has different boundaries. And if, this fraternity, for example, is setting general parameters like, oh, you need to drink this much, or you need to get paddled this many times, or, swallow this many hot dogs, who freaking knows? It's like everyone's got a different level. So, how do you then sort of cater or modify or adjust this system of hazing to maximize the growth of your prospect? That's the real question, I think, because there is definitely value in suffering. There is value in testing your boundaries, and whether you're doing it on your own or you're motivated by other people, everyone is different. Some people will not test their boundaries unless someone else pushes them. Other people will push against someone testing their boundaries because they grow the best pushing them on their own. So it's like, how do you even figure out what kind of person they are?